Today we are talking about a crisis that could change the world: possible preemptive Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. This is not just news from a distant region, it's a situation that affects gasoline prices, food, security, and even your future. Why is this important? The Middle East is a powder keg, and any conflict here can trigger a chain reaction around the world. In this video, we'll look at how Iran and Israel got to this point, who plays a key role, and what we can do to avoid a catastrophe. We will touch on history, technology, economics, and even the role of youth. This is going to be a deep debrief, so get ready. If you are interested in geopolitics, subscribe, like, and write in the comments, what do you know about this conflict? Have you heard the latest news? To understand why Iran and Israel are on the verge of war, let's go back to the beginning. Iran's nuclear program began in the 1950s, when the Shah's Iran was an ally of the West. In 1957, the United States helped create the Iranian Atomic Committee as part of the Atom for Peace program. In 1967, the first research reactor was launched in Tehran, and then no one thought about the military threat. Iran dreamed of modernization, and nuclear energy was a symbol of progress. Everything changed in 1979 with the Islamic Revolution. Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, and Iran became anti-Western. Relations with the United States and Israel soured. Tehran called Israel a Zionist enemy and the United States a great Satan. In the 1980s, Iran began secretly developing nuclear technology, which caused alarm. In 2002, intelligence discovered secret facilities in Natanz and Iraq. It was a shock. The world realized that Iran might be heading for nuclear weapons. Sanctions, IAEA inspections, and diplomatic battles have begun. In 2006, the UN introduced the first resolutions against Iran. In 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, was signed, a deal that limited Iran in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. But in 2018, U.S. President Donald Trump called the agreement a disaster and withdrew from it. Iran responded by resuming uranium enrichment to 20%, and by 2025, according to the IAEA, it had reached 90%, a level sufficient for a nuclear bomb. Israel sees this as a threat to survival. Their doctrine is simple: to prevent nuclear weapons from the opponents. In 1981, they destroyed the Iraqi Osirak reactor, and in 2007, the Syrian facility. The operations were risky, but successful. Today, Israel says Iran is next. But history teaches that such strikes can prevent a threat, but they incite hatred. Do you think Israel's actions are justified? By June 2025, the situation had escalated to the limit. According to the IAEA, Iran has installed over 10,000 new centrifuges and has reached a uranium enrichment level of 90%, which is the threshold for creating nuclear weapons. Experts such as David Albright of the Institute for Science and International Security warned that Iran could create a warhead in 12 to 18 months. For Israel, this is not just a threat, but a matter of survival. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the UN General Assembly in 2024, "We will not allow Iran to become a nuclear power." There is a split within Israel. The military and right-wing parties such as Likud insist on a preemptive strike. In 2024, the Air Force conducted the Blue Shield exercises, simulating an attack on Iranian facilities. General Amikam Norkin said, "We are ready for any scenario." But the opposition, including the Yesh Atid party and former Prime Minister Yair Lapid, advocates diplomacy, warning that war will lead to chaos. Protests are taking place in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Thousands of citizens are demanding a peaceful solution. One of the activists, Jonathan Levy, said, "The war will destroy the future of our children." Iran, for its part, denies the military objectives of the program. Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian stated in 2025, "Our program is exclusively peaceful, but we will respond to any aggression." Iran has Shahab-3 and Sijil ballistic missiles capable of reaching Israel in 10 minutes, and a network of allies, Hezbollah in Lebanon with an arsenal of 150,000 missiles, the Houthis in Yemen, and militias in Syria and Iraq. In 2024, Iran conducted the Great Prophet exercises, demonstrating its readiness for retaliatory strikes. Diplomacy is at an impasse. Negotiations in Vienna in 2024 have failed. Iran demands the complete lifting of sanctions, while the US and EU insist on strict inspections. Russia and China have called for restraint, but their influence is limited. Internal problems in Iran, the economic crisis, protests due to inflation only increase tension. In Israel, the 2025 elections have increased nationalist sentiment, making compromise difficult. Write in the comments, who do you think will take the first step, and is peace possible? The conflict between Iran and Israel is not only their business, but a global chess game. The United States is a key ally of Israel, providing $3.8 billion in military aid annually. Their fleet in the Persian Gulf and bases in Iraq and Qatar are increasing pressure on Iran. But the Biden administration is trying to revive the JCPOA in 2025, balancing support for Israel and a desire to avoid war. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said, "We are for diplomacy, but not at the expense of the security of allies." Will the United States support the strike? That's the billion-dollar question. Russia is Iran's strategic partner, supplying S-400 systems and energy technologies. In 2024, Moscow signed a military cooperation agreement with Tehran. China, which buys 25% of Iran's oil, advocates stability to protect its investments under the Belt and Road. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said, "The war in the region is not beneficial to anyone." The European Union is in a difficult position. Germany and France are afraid of a nuclear Iran, but the war will lead to a refugee crisis and rising gas prices. In 2024, the EU proposed a new package of sanctions, but it was blocked by Hungary. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, Iran's rivals, tacitly support Israel, but fear attacks by the Houthis. The UN and the IAEA call for inspections, but their resolutions are often ignored. Each power pursues its own interests: the US hegemony, Russia influence, China resources, the EU stability. Who do you think is playing the main role? And can the UN become an arbitrator? In 2025, wars are fought not only with missiles, but also in the digital space. Israel is a pioneer of cyber technologies. In 2010, the Stuxnet virus, allegedly created by the United States and Israel, disabled 1,000 centrifuges at Natanz, delaying Iran's program for years. Today, cyber attacks can shut down power grids, banks, or military systems. In 2023, the Israeli company NSO Group was accused of spying on Iranian officials through Pegasus. Iran is also strong. In 2023, hackers affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps attacked Israeli hospitals and Ben Gurion Airport, causing chaos. In 2024, Iran created a cyber army of 10,000 hackers capable of attacking the West. General Hossein Salami stated, "Our cyber potential is our shield." AI is a new level. Israel uses AI to analyze satellite imagery and control drones. Iran is developing AI for cyber attacks and propaganda. But there is a risk. In 2024, an AI failure in the Israeli air defense system almost led to an erroneous strike. Cyber war is blurring boundaries, and its consequences are unpredictable. Do you think a cyber attack could trigger a real war? If Israel decides to strike, how will it be? The targets are the nuclear facilities at Natanz, Fordo, Iraq, and Bushehr. Israel can use F-35 stealth fighters, Jericho-3 missiles with a range of 4,000 kilometers, and Harop drones. Cyber attacks like Stuxnet will weaken Iran's air defenses. According to Rand Corporation analysts, the strikes will delay Iran's program for 5 to 7 years, but will not completely destroy it. Iran will respond with lightning speed. Their Shahab 3 and Sijil missiles can hit Tel Aviv or Haifa in 10 minutes. Hezbollah, with an arsenal of 150,000 rockets, is capable of firing at Israel for weeks. The Houthis in Yemen may attack Saudi oil facilities, and the Syrian militias may attack U.S. bases in Iraq. In 2024, Iran successfully tested the Khorramshahr missile with a range of 2,000 kilometers. The world will react instantly. The US and the EU will impose sanctions. Russia and China will condemn Israel. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in 2025, escalation is unacceptable. But the main risk is a regional war. Think of Lebanon in 2006, 33 days of fighting claimed 1,200 lives. The stakes are higher today. Do you think it's possible to limit ourselves to pinpoint strikes? A conflict is not only a military action, but also a blow to people and the economy. Iran exports 2.5 million barrels of oil per day, providing 5% of the global market. Strikes on its facilities can raise prices to $200 per barrel, as in the crisis of 1973, when prices quadrupled. This will affect Europe, where gas already costs €2 per liter, and Asia, which depends on imports. Inflation, rising food and energy prices will affect everyone, including you and me. The humanitarian consequences are even worse. The war will create millions of refugees. The Syrian crisis has forced 6 million people to leave their homes since 2011, and 500,000 have died. A new conflict in Iran, Lebanon, or Syria will lead to a flood of refugees to Turkey, Greece, Germany. There are 85 million people in Iran, and many may flee due to fighting or sanctions. The global economy is on edge. In 2022, sanctions against Russia caused a recession in the EU. The new crisis may be global. For example, in 2024, rising oil prices added $300 to the average American's annual spending. How will this affect your country? The conflict between Iran and Israel is not only about missiles and politics, but also a huge blow to the economy and people. Iran is one of the largest oil exporters, supplying 2.5 million barrels per day, accounting for about 5% of the global market. If nuclear facilities or oil infrastructure are attacked, oil prices could soar to $200 per barrel. Remember the crisis of 1973, when the Arab oil embargo increased prices fourfold, causing a global recession. Today, this would mean an increase in gasoline prices to €2 per liter in Europe, an increase in the cost of food, transport, and heating. For example, in 2024, a spike in energy prices added $300 to the average American household's annual spending. The humanitarian consequences are even more frightening. A war in Iran or neighboring countries like Lebanon or Syria will create millions of refugees. The Syrian conflict has forced 6 million people to leave their homes and claimed 500,000 lives since 2011. There are 85 million people in Iran, and even partial fighting could trigger mass migration to Turkey, Iraq, or Europe. In 2015, the refugee crisis from Syria overloaded the systems of Greece and Germany, causing political upheaval. The new influx of refugees will increase pressure on humanitarian organizations and EU countries. The global economy is already shaky. Sanctions against Russia in 2022 caused an energy crisis and recession in Europe. A new conflict could lead to a global recession. For example, in India, which depends on oil imports, rising prices in 2024 increased inflation to 7%. In Africa, where fuel is a luxury, the crisis will make life even harder. How will this affect your country? And what is more important, economic stability or humanitarian aid? Energy is the lifeblood of the global economy, and the conflict in Iran could cut it off. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes. If Israeli strikes disable Iranian ports or tankers, oil and gas prices will soar. In 2022, sanctions against Russia raised gas prices in Europe to €50 per megawatt hour, paralyzing the industry. The new crisis will be worse. Europe, which depends on imports, will face shortages, and Asia, especially India and Japan, will pay more for fuel. Who will win? The United States and Norway, major oil and gas exporters, will increase profits. Saudi Arabia and the UAE can increase supplies, but they risk becoming targets of the Houthis, who attacked the Aramco plant in 2019, reducing exports by 5%. China, which buys 25% of Iran's oil, will lose out. Fuel shortages will hit its factories. In 2024, China has already reduced imports from Iran by 10% due to sanctions. There are alternatives, but they are slow. Europe is investing in green energy. In 2024, 40% of Germany's electricity came from wind and solar. But the full transition will take decades. As long as the world depends on oil, the Middle East is a powder keg. And another question: how will the conflict affect climate goals? War can divert resources away from green technologies. How do you think the energy crisis will change your region? And is green energy important in such a situation? How do people perceive this conflict? In Israel, polls in 2025 show that 60% of citizens support a preemptive strike, but 30% are in favor of diplomacy. In Tel Aviv, protests gather up to 10,000 people demanding peace. Activist Miriam Cohen said, "We don't want a war that will destroy our future." In Iran, the state media calls Israel an aggressor, but the youth, suffering from 40% inflation, want stability. In 2022, protests in Iran over prices claimed 200 lives. Platform X is a mirror of public opinion. Posts like "Israel is defending itself," they get thousands of likes, but others are like "war is imperialism," are also popular. Western media such as CNN and the BBC often support Israel, while Al Jazeera and Press TV often support Iran. Fakes complicate everything. In 2024, the video of the Iran nuclear test turned out to be a montage, but received 5 million views. How to navigate this? Check the original sources. Reports from the IAEA, the UN, or posts on X from experts like at Middle East Eye give the real picture. But the propaganda is strong. In 2023, Iran launched a social media campaign accusing Israel of genocide. Israel responds with counter-propaganda. Where do you get the news? And how to distinguish the truth from the fake? The youth of Iran and Israel are the ones who will inherit the consequences of the conflict. In Iran, 60% of the population is under the age of 30. They live under sanctions, with inflation at 40% and unemployment at 20%. Many people dream of freedom, but they are proud of national independence. In 2022, the protests over the death of Mahsa Amini showed their strength: 20,000 arrests, 200 deaths. In Israel, young people are required to serve in the army, seeing Iran as a threat. But there are also activists, such as the Shalom Akshav movement, demanding peace. Lior Shapiro, a student at Tel Aviv University, said, "We are tired of fear. Conflict steals their dreams. War will destroy universities, startups, and families." Social media, especially X, gives young people a voice. Posts with the hashtag #IranIsrael 2025 are gaining millions of views. In Iran, young bloggers are calling for reforms, in Israel for dialogue. In 2024, the Iranian youth organized an online campaign "Peace Instead of War," collecting 100,000 signatures. Can young people change the course of events? And how do you, young viewers, see your future in such a world? This conflict is not new. History gives lessons. In 1962, the Caribbean crisis almost led to a nuclear war between the United States and the USSR. The diplomacy of Kennedy and Khrushchev saved the world. In 1981, Israel destroyed Iraq's Osirak reactor, delaying Saddam Hussein's program but increasing hostility. In 2003, the invasion of Iraq, based on false information about nuclear weapons, claimed 100,000 lives and destabilized the region. Another example is Lebanon in 2006. Israel's war with Hezbollah lasted 33 days, claimed 1,200 lives and destroyed infrastructure. The consequences? Hezbollah has become stronger. Lessons learned: first, military strikes rarely solve a problem permanently. Secondly, intelligence is mistaken, no weapons were found in Iraq. Thirdly, diplomacy works if there is a will. Today's crisis is similar to the Caribbean, but with a bigger stake: nuclear weapons are closer than ever. History teaches that hasty actions lead to long-term problems. In 1991, the first Gulf War made Iran a regional power. What lessons do you see? And can history help to avoid war? What awaits the Middle East? Experts such as Kenneth Pollack of the Brookings Institution draw 4 scenarios. The first is war. Israel strikes. Iran responds by involving Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Syria. In 2006, the war in Lebanon showed how quickly the conflict was escalating. The second is diplomacy. The new JCPOA will limit Iran, but will require the lifting of sanctions. In 2015, it worked, but not for long. The third is the Cold War: cyber attacks, sanctions, and proxy conflicts without direct fighting. In 2023, Israel and Iran exchanged 50 cyber attacks. The fourth is the nuclear race. Saudi Arabia and Turkey begin their programs, as Pakistan did in 1998. Every scenario is dangerous. War will destroy the region, and diplomacy requires trust, which does not exist. The Cold War will drain resources, and the race will make the Middle East a nuclear testing ground. The IAEA experts say that without control, Iran will receive weapons by 2027. Compromise is the best way, but it is difficult. In 2024, negotiations in Vienna failed due to mutual accusations. Which scenario do you think is real? And what can stop the escalation? Is it possible to avoid war? Yes, but it takes a lot of effort. The first way is diplomacy. A new round of negotiations involving the United States, the EU, Russia, and China could revive the JCPOA. In 2015, this limited Iran to 3.67% uranium enrichment. The second is economic incentives, lifting sanctions in exchange for transparency. In 2023, Iran offered inspections in exchange for $10 billion in aid, but the West refused. The third is a regional dialogue. Saudi Arabia and Turkey can reduce tension, as in 2021, when Riyadh and Tehran began negotiations. The obstacles are serious. Israel does not believe Iran, referring to the secret facilities of 2002. Iran accuses the West of imperialism. But civil society gives hope. In 2024, 50,000 people in Iran signed a petition for peace, and in Israel, the Women for Peace movement gathered 20,000 at a march. International NGOs like Amnesty International are calling for de-escalation. UN Secretary-General Guterres said, "Peace is a choice, not a destiny." You can also have an impact, share information, maintain a dialogue. In 2024, the hashtag Peace for Middle East on X garnered 2 million posts. Which step towards peace do you consider real? And what would you do in the place of the leaders? Friends, the conflict between Iran and Israel is a challenge for the whole world. The war threatens millions of lives, the economy, and the future. But peace is possible if we talk, act, and demand dialogue. Share this video with your friends to let more people know the truth. Write in the comments, how do you see the solution? Do you believe in diplomacy? Subscribe and click the bell so that you don't miss the new geopolitical discussions. Thanks for watching, and let's build a peaceful future together.